At 15,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean, the air was thin, freezing, and unforgiving. Inside a damaged B-24 Liberator bomber, chaos ruled. Engines screamed, warning lights flashed, and oxygen masks hung loose like dead weight. This was supposed to be just another bombing mission. Instead, it became one of the strangest and most unbelievable dogfight moments of World War II. A moment where a man faced an enemy fighter with nothing but a pistol in his hand. The B-24 Liberator was not a small aircraft. It was a massive four-engine bomber, designed to fly long distances and carry heavy bomb loads deep into enemy territory. Crews trusted its firepower, its gunners, and its ability to absorb punishment. But on this mission over Japanese-controlled territory in 1943, the Liberator's strength was about to be tested beyond anything its designers imagined. As the bomber formation crossed hostile skies, Japanese Zero fighters appeared like shadows in the sun. Fast, agile, and deadly, the Zeros attacked with precision, targeting engines and crew positions. Anti-aircraft fire burst around the bombers, black clouds ripping through metal and glass. One burst slammed into this B-24, tearing through the fuselage and shattering the cockpit canopy. In an instant, the aircraft violently depressurized. The wind roared inside like a hurricane. Loose papers vanished into the sky. A crew member was partially sucked out, barely hanging on. The aircraft lurched, losing altitude. Communication broke down. The bomber was wounded, isolated, and suddenly very vulnerable. Then something even worse happened. A Japanese fighter swooped in close, far too close. The pilot wasn't just attacking. He was pacing the bomber, matching speed, circling like a predator. The gunners couldn't get a clean shot. Some guns were damaged. Others couldn't angle properly. The Zero moved beneath the bomber's belly, a blind spot where the Liberator's heavy firepower meant nothing. Inside the cockpit, the pilot realized something terrifying. The enemy plane was so close that the Japanese pilot could clearly see him. This was no longer long-range combat. It was personal. The B-24 pilot unstrapped himself slightly, leaning forward through the shattered canopy. The freezing wind tore at his face. At 15,000 feet, breathing was difficult. One mistake meant death, either from falling or from the enemy's guns. The Japanese fighter slid even closer, almost underneath the cockpit. And that's when the pilot did something no flight manual had ever suggested. He reached down and drew his standard-issue pistol. The Zero suddenly veered violently. Its smooth flight collapsed into chaos. The fighter dipped, rolled, and then spiraled downward, disappearing into the clouds below. There was no parachute, no recovery, just silence where an enemy aircraft had been seconds before. Inside the B-24, the crew stared in disbelief. A Japanese fighter had just been shot down by a pistol. The bomber, still damaged and barely controllable, limped away from the combat zone. Engines struggled. Fuel leaked. Crew members worked frantically to keep the aircraft alive. Against all odds, the B-24 made it back to friendly territory. When the story was later reported, many refused to believe it. Intelligence officers questioned it. Fellow airmen laughed it off. It sounded like a wartime myth, the kind of exaggerated tale pilots told after a few drinks. But combat reports confirmed the encounter. Enemy aircraft destroyed. No other gunfire accounted for the kill. The impossible had happened. This moment revealed something deeper about aerial warfare in World War II. Despite all the machines, technology, and tactics, survival often came down to individual decisions made in seconds. Pilots weren't just operators of machines. They were humans thrown into situations no one could fully prepare for. Japanese Zero fighters were feared for good reason. Early in the war, they outmatched many Allied aircraft in maneuverability. They were deadly in close combat, but they were also lightly armored. Speed and agility came at the cost of protection. That vulnerability, combined with sheer chance, allowed a pistol round to become lethal. The B-24 Liberator itself was a paradox. Powerful yet fragile. Heavily armed, but full of blind spots. Crews nicknamed it the Flying Coffin early in the war due to its high loss rates. Missions were long, exhausting, and psychologically brutal. Crews knew that once they crossed the coastline, survival depended on luck as much as skill. This pistol incident became a symbol of that reality. It wasn't about heroics in the traditional sense. It was about desperation, about refusing to accept death when every option seemed gone. Years later, aviation historians would still debate the physics of the shot. Could a pistol round really down a fighter? Was it a lucky hit? Did it strike the pilot directly? The truth may never be fully known, but perhaps that uncertainty is what makes the story so powerful. World War II was full of moments where the impossible happened, not because of superior weapons, but because ordinary people made extraordinary choices under unbearable pressure. This was one of those moments. At 15,000 feet, surrounded by freezing air and enemy fighters, a man trusted his instincts over probability. And for one brief moment in the vast chaos of war, it worked. Today, the story stands as one of the most bizarre and unforgettable air combat encounters in history. Not because of advanced technology or overwhelming firepower, but because a single pistol, in the hands of a desperate pilot, changed the outcome of a fight that should never have been winnable. And that's the haunting truth of war. Sometimes, survival doesn't come from strategy or strength. It comes from refusing to give up, even when the odds say you're already dead.